Hello everyone, welcome back to Midas Letter Live and Ed Milewski. I'm Ed Milewski, your host, co-host again, Ben Smith.
Hello everybody.
How are you, Ben?
Good to be here, Ed. How are you?
Another day of chickens coming home to roost.
Yeah, I think so. It's under unfortunate circumstances, unfortunately, but we're here to talk about that and try to flesh out everything involved with the situation and how it affects the sector. I'm glad to partake in that discussion.
Yeah, we're going to, the show today, we're going to have the news. CEO of SugarBud, Alan Brochstein, is going to be with us via Skype. The question of the day, we're going to have viewers' questions. Todd Harrison, who runs a fund, a CB1 capital fund, is going to be with us. And we're going to do the drive test with our friend Sean, who's, I think this time he's going to be a little high.
Under the influence.
Under the influence, legally, but not simulated. Yeah. Okay. So here we are. I got to tell you, it's hard to feel good about what's going on. I mean, you know, we're talking about all this stuff and a lot of allegations being thrown out there, a lot of talk. You know, Aphria has given up half its value since Friday, roughly. Still capped at $1 billion or slightly more. Anyway, I'm just throwing out some comments. I'm not trying to stay impartial here, trying to stay objective.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think the toughest thing about this particular scenario is it appears there's a significant spillover effect with other companies in the industry, other LPs that under the blanket suspicion, because there has been so much merger and acquisition activity, there has been other LPs purchasing other properties overseas. So the pall of suspicion, if you want to call it, unfairly, most likely in most cases, is sort of filtering into others, and you're seeing some technical damage occur with some of the larger names, and actually across the board. It's not limited to large caps or small caps. It's pretty much across the spectrum. So,
and we should point out that the U.S. is a holiday today, a mourning day for the past president George Bush. So it's just Canadian trading. We're going to talk about a lot of these things throughout the show, but first, here's Ricky with the news.
Thanks, and here's what's making news today. IGC Resources Inc. and Westleaf Cannabis Inc. announced that IGC has closed its previously announced brokered private placement of subscription receipts of IGC for gross proceeds of more than $20 million. Westleaf also announced that Tilray Inc. has made a $2.9 million strategic investment through the offering. The net proceeds from the offering are intended to be used by the resulting issuer for expansion of its operations and general corporate purposes. Westleaf is targeting between 20 to 30 retail store openings over the next 12 to 24 months, subject to securing real estate, finalizing lease agreements, and completing provincial and municipal approvals. And SugarBud Craft Growers Corp has announced that Mobini, PhD, will become Master Cultivator, and Craig Kolochuk, President and Chief Executive Officer of the company, will be joining its board of directors. Dr. Mobini holds a PhD in horticulture and agricultural biotechnology with a focus on aeroponics, soilness and tissue culture, and plant breeding. Most recently, Dr. Mobini was a greenhouse specialist at the Alberta Agriculture and Forestry Ministry, and before that, he was a postdoctoral fellow and research officer at the University of Saskatchewan, where he developed innovative concepts for improving indoor crop growth and production. And Ben will speak to President and CEO Craig Kolochuk later in the show. And Even Co. Incorporated announced that its common shares will be listed for trading on the OTCQB market in the United States under the symbol EEVVF effective December 6, 2018. The company's shares will also continue to trade on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol EVE. And Namaste Technologies Inc. intends to launch the Namaste Cafe global concept, which is being produced in partnership with the Canadian restaurateur Jonathan Dresner. Namaste also announced its exclusive line of healthy eating and living branded food products in partnership with chef Pete Evans. Heal will feature products and recipes specifically designed by Pete with a cannabis twist, subject to the anticipated regulations for cannabis edibles and concentrates. The company will produce a line of cannabis-infused Heal branded products for sale through the regulated market. And that's your news for today.
Yeah, lots of news in the space, but you know it's hard not to stop. It's hard to stop thinking about what's going on with Aphria. At least it is for me, because I mean it has a lot of implications for everything else, I think.
Yeah, absolutely it has implications. I think the immediate ones are sector credibility. It's sort of like a de facto judgment on the sector for whether that's fair or not. I don't think it is in many cases. A lot of companies conduct their own fairness or valuation. They have different valuation models that they employ. When they purchase assets, they have different methodologies towards procuring those assets. So I think it's unfair to paint everybody on the same brush. But that being said, it's an early growth stage industry, and a lot of the times, not everything, corporate governance isn't really up to tier 1 levels in early stage growth industries, and that's just a byproduct of maturity, which I think the good news in all this, it's going to expedite corporate governance levels now that the market sees what can happen to your stock if you don't do things the right way, if any impropriety actually occurred.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, I got the chart of Aphria up here. I'm just, I think I got to click on something.
So what did it close at? Like above, not close at. Right now it's at about $4.99 on the Canadian side, down about 16%.
Yeah, can we get this chart up, or do I have to click on the NDI, or? I don't, Okay. Yeah, I don't know why I can't get this on here, ladies and gentlemen, but...
So I guess we're having technical difficulties, but right now...
yeah, Aphria's at $5.
$5.
Yeah, there's a definite line here around $10. There's a pretty big level of support, and Monday we broke through that, and it's down here. We're trading at $5. Market cap now is about 1.2 billion, it looks like.
It's around those levels, fully diluted?
Yeah. Here we are, last at $5. Yeah, it's market cap. Yeah, I just, for some reason, we can't get this up. I'd like to do it. Okay, here we go. Now, what charts are we?
The top right is Aphria there.
Is that it? That's just today, though,
That's
right?
That's the intraday chart.
Yeah, I'd like to
right.
put up a 1 year chart.
Yeah, and
we got to scroll it over because we're not seeing the action here for the last this week. So we need to keep going. Yeah, that chart doesn't show the recent. In any event, so the U.S. market's closed. I think Aphria opened around 490 and backed up to 6 and change, and now it's back to the lows. So we're getting some backing and filling. We may stay in a range for quite a while here. There's not much going on. Well, there's nothing going on in the U.S. today because of the holiday. The fact that it's listed on New York, I mean, there's obviously going to be some investigation done by the New York Stock Exchange. I mean, this just got listed there, right? So, I mean,
well, I think if you're long Aphria stock, if you're a long-term investor, the first thing that you should be looking for is to see whether there's another shoe dropping. It's my understanding that Hindenburg Research is coming out with the second part of their report, of their bearish report, which they released on Tuesday, I believe, or was it Monday or Tuesday? And it was Monday actually.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the first thing that you want to do in these situations is stop the bleeding. So if you're an investor, you want, if there's no further news that comes out, then the market can start assessing, what the damage is done, but what is the fair market value of the remaining assets, on the Canadian side, and all the good things that Aphria has going on. For example, the 5-year supply agreement with Shoppers Drug Mart,
right?
The Broken Coast brand. There's a lot of good things happening. The 250,000 keys that are supposed to come online by the second half of 2019. So then, once you stop the bleeding, then you can start looking at what they have, and start reevaluating the company based on what they had, assuming that the Latin American assets, whether they're overinflated or not, then you can make a different determination than that. The company will speak for itself on that behalf.
Yeah, if you're sitting there and you're Shoppers, and obviously it's the executives at Shoppers are reading the news. I mean, everybody's got to be thinking like the last thing that a company like Shoppers wants to do is be involved with something that's, and we don't know the full real story yet, or is it just a case of a bubble inflating values? Which it could be, and so yeah, it's very very frustrating.
So in defense, I mean, at least my interpretation of the events, without being accusatory or without passing judgment on either side, I don't look at this as really the worst case scenario where everything was there's some fraudulent activities or anything like that. From my perspective, everything is there. It just, the valuation of the certain assets and the way they were described, may or may not have been inflated to a certain degree. But I mean, I think people have to realize that it's not like other situations, like an Enron situation where, things were, completely books being cooked or anything like that. And that was, sort of a fraudulent thing. I think this is different altogether. So once you can stop the bleeding, then the market can start assessing what what's truly there.
That chart, just put that chart back up again, please. Yeah, there we go. So again, there was this support that we bounced off twice, back to almost the highs, and now just drawing a line here. We've broken that, and I'm looking at it as objectively as I can. I say this does not look good, but sure, we could have a rally back to that line. That often happens. I think there's going to be lots of fallout from this.
Well, the fallout's already happened. The question is, do you have the worst case scenario where, regulators step in and all that, or do you have a stop the bleeding case where the rabbit hole doesn't get any deeper, and then we can do that reassessment about what is actually there and what is actually, and fairly value the assets that are on the books and the revenues that they're going to start to be producing next year. So I guess there's two sides of the coin. In terms of the allegations, the company will defend itself on its own merit, and we'll see what happens tomorrow when Hindenburg comes out with the new findings.
I just put up a chart of weed, which is canopy growth. Now, so look, so here we are, just before, and we've done this 100 times, but that's where we closed just before they announced the injection of cash by Constellation, $32. Ran up here. There we are. We went legal, I believe, there, and now we've just broken a bit of support there and there. This is epic.
Yeah, there's no question. The whole sector. I mean, pull up any chart.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually one of the good charts. Canopy growth is actually one of the stronger charts until recently. I mean, the whole sector has been desecrated. Obviously, post legalization, it's been more of a, the reality of, business operations is hit, and it's not a what could be scenario anymore. So, and then, of course, revenues, have not been coming in and streaming in like some of the analysts had forecast. So that put a damper on things, in the latter half of October. So it hasn't been a good period, no question. Hopefully, we can get some clarity on the Aphria situation and then get some visibility. But that's going to take time going into first half of 2019. And there's some good factors coming on board. In the quarterly reports, in a couple months' time, we'll start showing revenues from legalization period, which have been pretty strong. Demand's been pretty strong. So it's going to take time for the narrative to shift over, but I think it will. Just the only question is when, and the only question is about timing.
There is a lot of people that play the short side, as you know, and especially in the States. And so this report originated from the States. And when things look the worst, that's usually when you get a short cover rally. Like people start to buy, thinking, hey, I've got profits. Things start moving up a little bit. The other shorts get nervous. They start buying more and more. And you could have a 25 to 50% rally very, very quickly. But would it be a trade, or would it be an investment? Would you step in for investment purposes? I'm short-term oriented. I believe you've said the same thing.
I am short-term oriented by nature, yes.
Yeah. Buying and hold here is very dangerous, as we're seeing.
Well, that's why we have we bring our guests on, like Alan Brochstein is coming on later on, and Todd Harrison from CB1 Capital, and I have a lot of respect for those gentlemen because they are long-term focused, and they are here to help more short-term oriented folks like myself, keep an eye on the big picture. So that definitely helps. But right now, it's definitely hard to do that when you see prices basically falling on a daily basis. Double digits or high single digits. That's definitely tough.
Okay, we're going to switch gears here. You spoke to the SugarBud president, Craig Kolochuk, earlier. Here's that interview.
Welcome, everybody, to Midas Letter Live. I'm your host, Benjamin A. Smith, filling in for the one and only Mr. James West, who's on assignment. Today, we have a very special guest on the show. I'll be speaking with Craig Kolochuk. He is the President and Chief Executive Officer of SugarBud Craft Growers Corp. They trade on the TSX Venture under the symbol SURG. Craig, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Benjamin, for having me.
Absolutely. Now, to lead into it, it's your first time on the program, so it's a good time to give us an update on what the company's all about, some of the good things that are going on with the company, and whatever material information that investors have to look forward to in the next couple quarters.
Yeah, no, great time to tell our amazing story. SugarBud Craft Growers is an emerging Alberta-based, publicly traded cannabis company focused on growing handcrafted, select batch, ultra premium bud. Our objective is to cultivate a premium product and maintain margins in this highly competitive environment. And a bit of our history is we've gone from oil and gas to oil and grass. And we actually press released here today that we are now monetizing our oil and gas assets to become a pure cannabis player. Okay,
great. Now, I guess one of the things that stands out to me with your company is that you're not only aeroponics, you're not only an aeroponics grower, you're a vertically aeroponics grower. Can you explain the difference between the two?
Yeah, so aeroponics, in our opinion, is the premium play for growing. It gives you more weight per crop. It gives you better quality bud, higher THC, CBD, trichomes, aka sugar, and you use less water and fertilizer, so you keep your costs down. But what we're doing is we're taking it to the next level, and we're doing vertical grow. So we're scaling up so we have better floor utilization, which means increased revenue per square foot of grow.
And that's important for investors to realize too, because the advantages actually go beyond that, correct? you're in a similar space as James E. Wagner, and I believe they're only doing it on one floor. But there are advantages such as crop rotations, from my understanding, more cultivation cycles due to the nature of the way the cannabis is grown, and other advantages such as not having to change dirt and just change components and putting in a crop cycle literally the next day after harvest. Is your company going to be able to realize all those advantages as well beyond the traditional grower?
Absolutely. We're going, we're perceiving that we're going to get 5 to 6 crops a year versus 2 to 3 on the dirt hydro side. As you alluded to, it's a cleaner way of growing. There's no dirt. The roots are suspended in the air. There's instant uptake of nutrients and oxygen. We can flip a crop in 7-8 weeks. So yields are higher, annualized. Quality is better, and it's a cleaner way to grow.
Okay, from my understanding, right now you're not actually harvesting right now. There's a couple hurdles to get to. Perhaps you can give us a timeline on any licenses that are going to come into place, and the timeline of when your facility is going to be ready to start producing harvests and having a revenue accretive to the balance sheet.
Absolutely, good question. That's what a lot of investors are asking us right now. We broke ground on our state-of-the-art purpose-built facility in July of this year, and we should have the keys by Christmas or early January. We've scheduled our videographer for middle of January, and what that is that you send a video to Health Canada to obtain your cultivation license. Typical turnaround is 3-4 weeks. So as it stands today, we're in the position to be growing kind of mid to late February for cultivation, and then from there you need to test out 2 batches. And the beautiful thing with aeroponics is we can do a crop in 7-8 weeks. We're hoping to run 2 batches in parallel. So ideally for us, we obtain our sales license in second quarter 2019.
Okay, terrific. And I would imagine that also another important feature to your business model is the stability in terms of how you grow the product. For example, we've seen some high-profile cases recently where some LPs maybe miss the mark on some of their cycles because growing marijuana isn't exactly the easiest thing to do. There's mold, there's pests. It's not like growing tomatoes in your backyard. So is there any risks at that from your perspective from the aeroponics grow, or does your business model sort of virtually preclude any of those problematic harvests from taking place? So I think that's an underestimated thing that maybe investors aren't focusing on, the stability of how you produce products.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily whether we do aero or whether we do hydro or dirt. I think what we've done is we've built our facility such that we have 8, for phase 1, we have 8 controlled grow environments. Each room is 2,200 square feet. It's 22 feet high in height for vertical. And this way we can manage any pests and pathogens. And if you did have to dust a crop, you're only dusting 1 crop versus these large scale greenhouses that have 100,000 square feet of in one room, and it's a lot harder to control. So like whether we do aero or any grow methodology, we've learned from what our competitors are doing, and we think these individual controlled grow environments is the way to go.
And finally, mid-month, you announced that you secured a $25 million equity facility with Illumina Partners LLC, which has also supported some other smaller LPs in the Canadian marketplace. Has that money been put to use, or is a lot of that going towards getting the new facility ready? And do you anticipate going to market, in the near future, or will you be up and running before you have to go to the market again, if that's needed?
Well, I'm going to back up a bit before the Illumina draw or financing that we've done. Initially, access to capital has been phenomenal for us, and it really speaks, I think, to our story and to the credibility of our team. Initially, we raised $8.25 million around this recap of the oil and gas company to pursue cannabis opportunities. With that placement, there was a rights offering done in September of this year, and we had a fully subscribed rights offering of $7.4 million. In parallel, we were talking with Farm Credit Corporation, a Crown company, and we were able to secure a commitment letter from them for $17.65 million. And Farm Credit had looked at 30 plus cannabis deals. They scrubbed us down for 3-4 months, and we were able to secure that financing. And then on top of that, as you alluded to, most recently we have tied up aluminum partnerships out of New York for a $25 million drawdown equity line, and we have not drawn on that yet. And the plans are to use that for an ambitious retail strategy, an extraction facility, and any other interesting joint venture opportunities that present themselves.
Great. So it looks like you're all cashed up or have access to cash, which is terrific. Okay, Craig, we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you. Great job on your inaugural appearance on Midas Letter, and we look forward to covering your story further as the story progresses in the new year.
Thanks very much, Benjamin. Appreciate your time.
Great interview, Ben. We're going to go right now to Alan Brochstein, founder of 420 Investor. Alan.
Hello?
How are you?
Hi, hearing you guys.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear me, Alan? Nothing?
Alan can't hear us.
It appears we have some technical difficulties. We'll try to straighten that out in the back room.
Can you hear us now?
Can't hear.
You guys get that in the control room? Okay.
Let me see if I can test my... It's live. It shouldn't be having this problem. But bear with me one sec.
We can hear you loud and clear.
Yep, it's streaming in from our end.
Hey, there we go. I'm sorry, it was working earlier.
Okay, you got us?
It's good.
All right, terrific.
Sorry about that.
It's nice to meet you, Alan. I'm a big fan of your work. I do follow your new Cannabis Ventures property, and it's nice to meet you finally.
Yeah, likewise, and thanks for all that Twitter love. I wish I was as giving as you are.
So what do you think of this? What do you think of this Aphria story that's developing?
What Aphria story? I haven't heard. No.
I was afraid you were going to say that.
Yeah. I'm still processing it. I'm kind of upset for the industry, for the company. I don't want to... Let me be the first to say that these short sellers, I don't have any problem with generally the work they do. And I think they serve a very valuable purpose. And I've been known to publicly criticize companies, so I have no problem with that. My big picture takeaway is that they're focusing on some very specific details, and these details may be accurate. I'm trying to figure out how they relate exactly to Aphria, and it's not clear. So, to me, it was always obvious exactly what was going on, that you had insiders at Scythian, which is now SOL, that put together this deal. They ran it through Scythian for whatever reason, and then Scythian sold it to Aphria. So the question becomes, if there is some sort of fraudulent activity, which I'm not sure there is, but there's some funny details, obviously, people who don't exist, addresses that aren't there. So, but what does this mean for Aphria? And I'd like to just be certain that there's no fraud at the Aphria level. I obviously don't know that, but I don't believe that to be the case. I think the alternative, though, is it looks like maybe their due diligence process wasn't so great. And my own take on Aphria, they were one of the early front runners, and the company was always mentioned in the same breath as Aurora and Canopy. In fact, it was probably mentioned Canopy, Aphria, and then Aurora. And at this point, they got behind these other companies on multiple fronts. They got behind in the domestic assets, and so they bought Broken Coast very early this year because their mantra was always, we're going to do everything out of Leamington, out of the greenhouse. And I don't think that proved to be the right strategy, at least in the short term, because of all the provincial contracts and branding and a lot of different reasons. But on the international front, I think they got way behind. So I think if you step back and you say, what's really going on here? This is the second time they've done this deal like this, where they go out and they buy a package of assets that they didn't specifically put together. Although they were very involved in the due diligence process to some degree, right? They were Cole, one of their directors, went down to Latin America. So it's not like they were just buying this package with no due diligence. So I think it kind of tells you that maybe they were under pressure to keep up with the other leading LPs to establish their international footprint, and they kind of had to do these deals this way. And I think the one thing that I'm most critical of is that they gave SOL free trading stock to, and I think then if you look at other deals that are done in the sector, they're often tied to performance and future payouts. And so this was 100% stock free to trade.
So the fact that they just got listed on the New York Stock Exchange or relatively recently, I think it's pretty well known that the scrutiny by the New York Stock Exchange is much more than it is in Canada. At least that's the feeling that you got to pass go through a lot more hoops, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, they're New York listed, so now there's got to be a response from the New York Stock Exchange. No, I mean, or is there? I'm just wondering. I'm just talking.
I don't know why there has to be a response.
Okay.
I'll play the devil's advocate. Why does there have to be a response from the New York Stock Exchange?
I don't. I mean, especially if there's if the stock drops from $20 to it's $5 now, this has all happened in a month and a half. Yeah, maybe not. I just the scrutiny going forward for this industry is going to be a lot more. The magnifying glass is going to be a lot bigger. There's got to be a lot more due diligence,
So at this point, I don't know why the New York Stock Exchange. I don't know why the New York Stock Exchange would be looking at anything right now. Prices fall all the time, or they go up, and I don't think that exchanges micromanage.
Good.
If there was some information that came out that tied, the principals, the key people at Aphria to fraudulent activity, then I think that would be an issue. But they're relying on. The work of their legal counsel and an outside fairness opinion. There's a whole bunch of things that are in place here that I would think would protect them unless there's some sort of new evidence that comes out.
Now, Alan, I know you've been a big proponent of the U.S. sector, the valuation disparity between the U.S. sector versus the Canadian sector. Of course, the Canadian side is a lot more expensive, and you have been writing and talking about that since earlier this year, in the spring, I believe. And I agree with you. I've said the same thing post-legalization, that there could be a chasm where U.S. stocks start to fill in the valuation gap because there's a lot more catalysts ahead of it. Now, and that's exactly what has happened. U.S. stocks have been outperforming Canadian ones quite markedly, 13-14%. Now, do you think the Aphria situation has finally sort of hit U.S. stocks insofar that there's suspicion sort of going with some of the things going on, most commonly seen in U.S. stocks, such as the super voting rights and all that? Do you think there's a sort of a pull between industry practices on both sides of the border now, or is it just something that was going to, is it something that was just going to fill the gap anyway?
Yeah, this whole super voting stuff and all that, I don't even fully understand it, to be perfectly frank. It's become very common. Some of the older deals were not done this way. There was a article in the Globe and Mail a couple weeks ago about corporate governance, and I think there were 250 TSX listed companies, and right at the bottom was I think Aurora and Canopy right above them, and Aphria a few notches up. So it's pretty clear, and I don't think it has anything to do with the cannabis industry. I think it has more to do with new companies, and new companies have to evolve and get their standards up in terms of corporate governance. In the United States, I don't know that there's going to be spillover, this voting share issue. I think it's troubling to some people, but I don't know that there's more bad governance besides that. That's obviously not the American way. In America, it's democracy. Everybody should get to vote. But, it's not like this is a big secret. All these deals come forward, and it's all clearly explained, and I'm not exactly sure why they structure it this way. I've tried to understand. I've listened to some people and talking about these new classes of shares that are created, and I think the answer, from what I understand, is it's to avoid having to register with the SEC. So they're registering in Canada, and they don't. But it's complicated apparently to also register with the SEC. I think so on a new issue. It's just because it's a new issue. So I don't know. It's a little bit beyond me. But to your other point about the valuation gap, I didn't necessarily think Canadian valuations would go down. And I like to remind everybody, Canada has the whole world and the United States is limited. But the point I've been making is, while there's a lot more legal risk and there should be a valuation haircut in the United States, all you have to do is go to New Cannabis Ventures and look at the revenues that are being generated in the United States among the MSOs right now, and they're just getting started. And I get it. There's going to be a hockey stick in Canada as well for a few companies, not that many, but we're going to see sales really ramp up for the larger companies that have large-scale production facilities and all these contracts in hand, and that are focused on the legal market. Well, in the United States, where the product set's better, and there's all these new markets opening, and there's the M&A activity and all that, we're starting to see some really big numbers that they won't get that hockey stick necessarily, just like Canopy Growth and Aurora and Aphria are going to have in the next few quarters, but the numbers are higher in the United States.
So relatively speaking, do you feel the U.S. market has a little bit more potential than, say, the Canadian LPs who have the international side, as well as the domestic market here, which is approximately 10 times smaller? Yeah. Would you say the U.S. side probably has a little bit higher potential for growth a few quarters out, say 6 to 8 quarters out?
I think, yeah. Yes, what I would say is there's more potential and more risk, and I think that's the right way to frame it. People forget it was less than a year ago where the whole industry was thrown into chaos because the Cole memo was rescinded, and there was a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen. And there were people that had raised a lot of money or were on the verge of raising money, and the elections, this happened even before. When Donald Trump got elected, it threw uncertainty, and when the Republicans did the sweep, basically. And there were people that were ready to invest in the U.S. cannabis industry. But after that election, they pulled back. I heard this from a lot of people and just said, nope, give me my money back. I'm not investing. And so it's definitely more risky in the United States. I think we're headed in the right direction. That doesn't mean we're legalizing, by the way. So everybody needs to understand. So I tell my subscribers at 420 Investor, while I think the opportunity is greater in the United States, you should be prudent. I said this even yesterday. Pick the best Canadian LPs. Maybe have more exposure to the American market, but it might be imprudent to have all your eggs in the American basket.
Hey, Alan. I see that Cronos said again today that they're in talks with Marlboro, which is part of Altria. Any comments?
Right.
Like stocks, Cronos stocks acting. Acting much better. Like it's up from about, I guess, 10, 11 bucks.
Yep.
I think it hit 15, currently around 13. Might be a sort of a key point, right?
Yeah, I was kind of confused about why it did so well in November. It was an outlier. It was the best performer and not even close. And Canada's not known for being tight-lipped. Most of these deals leak out. It was pretty amazing that the Constellation Canopy deal went against that observation. But almost every other deal, it's amazing how leaky things are in Canada. I had not heard anything about this. And to the point, I don't even quite understand why Cronos Group necessarily over other companies. Like, it would not be my first pick, and nothing against the management team or anything like that. But there's other companies that seem to be more advanced thus far anyway, but more importantly, just better values. So I've struggled with the Cronos valuation for the last couple of years. So I might not be the right person to ask, but in general, this would be the kind of thing the industry needs to see. There's been a lot of talk. This company in particular was rumored to be talking with Aphria. Nothing happened. Coca-Cola was speaking with Aurora, and nothing happened. Diageo was supposedly going after Aphria, and nothing happened. So it would be nice to actually see one of these deals hit. My prediction is that we're going to see more of these deals, maybe a pharmaceutical company. I think it makes a lot of sense. So a pharmaceutical company that wants to get into cannabis really, in my view, has only three options. One is to just start up, and I don't think that's a great option. Two is to buy GW Pharma. I think that's a pretty darn good option. But three would be to buy a Canadian LP. It allows them to do a lot of research without all the rigmarole of being a U.S. operator. Of course, if you're a multinational company, that might not be an issue anyway. But the Canadian LPs, it's totally legal in Canada. It's as safe as a haven as one could ever find to do that type of research. And we're already seeing companies in Canada like CannTrust, like Canopy Growth, I'm trying to think, there's some others too, that are doing these clinical trials right now already. And so that's to me going to be exciting. I think we'll see that next year, finally, where we see a pharmaceutical company enter the space.
Okay.
Sounds good, Alan. I guess we have to wrap it up. This segment's over, but I was going to ask you what stock you liked. What's your favorite name? If you can do that in 20 seconds before we wrap up, that'd be great. Client or no client?
Oh boy, I really don't like to do that. I will say that if you read what I wrote in my newsletter on Sunday, I mentioned a whole bunch of companies and their operating cash flows that really are radically different. And I'm kind of interested in some of those companies that are not burning cash as fast. And I'm not saying that you should avoid the ones that are, but I'm thinking that maybe some of these other companies that are better capital allocators, that may be something that people pick up on next year. And so go to my newsletter at newcannabisventures.com on Sunday, and you'll see at the top of the list and at the bottom of the list, and you'll figure out what I'm talking about.
Thank you very much, Alan. Always great to hear from you from Texas, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you very much, Alan.
Nice to meet you, Ben.
Thank you, Alan.
Wow.
It's a great interview. Alan's a great interview.
Yeah, he's obviously a smart guy, and I like his reference to looking at companies that are throwing off cash, and I know, for instance, the ticker's TRST. I always trouble with their name, but I think is that CannTrust?
That's CannTrust.
Yeah, CannTrust. If you look at their last quarter, they added to their cash. Like they're cash flow positive.
Their net income after all expenses, it's right there. So it's not even EBITDA. It's net.
No, it's real cash on cash. But then you can add back the non-cash items, and it just to give you a better indication is if your cash is improving, it's like you're in your household. If your savings account goes up every month, it makes for a nice happy wife. Just saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Happy wife, happy life. Anyway. Okay, that's great. Now, I guess we got a question here. Today's question of the day: what was your worst investment?
What was your worst investment?
I have a friend who's a geologist, and he staked a claim on a sapphire mine in Madagascar. And even though all the geology reports were amazing and it looked like it was going to be a great return, the government went under, and we couldn't get access to the mine anymore. We lost everything we put in.
What's the worst investment you've ever made?
So it was Ripple, because I didn't make money with it. I invest on it, and that was the worst investment I ever made.
My worst investment ever was a penny stock in the water space. And it was an investment I made as a very rookie investor based on some people's opinions and not based on due diligence, which I would never do again.
Worst investment I ever made was a pair of Tim Duncan foam posits. Nike foam posits, metallic silver. I got them for over $500. I got ripped off. Anyone that's out there that wants sneakers, make smart investments. Make sure they fit too, because if they don't fit, you're gonna be upset with a tight foot.
Yeah, I got a good story here. Earlier in my career, I was shorting a lot of stocks after the Y2K 2000 fiasco, and a lot of stocks had melted from 2000 to 2003. That bear market, was and I was convinced as a young broker, and I think I'm pretty sure I was convinced that companies like Amazon were going to go to zero because I just didn't see the cash flow and blah blah blah. And I'm pretty sure I said you could make a fortune shorting Amazon, and it went from $7 back then and recently hit $2,100. Only made 300 times your money. So even though I didn't,
it wasn't a large aggregate loss. It was the wrong way. Clearly,
it was just how myopic you can be, thinking that you understand what's going on in the world, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I couldn't have. I mean, come on, it was the best thing you could have done was buy a few thousand shares, go on a 10-year excursion, come back, and you'd be extremely wealthy.
Well, you know what? In all fairness, Ed, I was trading heavily during the tech crisis, and Amazon was mostly books back then. So they've evolved. They started out with books, and then went to different products, and no one could really foresaw that would be a $2,000 stock at some point. But it also goes to show you how how tough protracted selling can be on investor sentiment, right? I mean, these are some of the best names in the tech space at the time, and Amazon was selling at $8, and Apple I think went to $8, and some of these stocks, eBay went. You could
have sat there and picked up all the Apple you wanted. Like it was nothing for quite a long time.
Yeah, single digits.
And Microsoft, another one. Now, Microsoft, I think, recently surpassed Apple again as the #1 market cap stock in the world. It's that.
I believe that was Amazon, no?
Well, Amazon did, then Microsoft did. If you look now, like Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple are all about the same. Mr. Edward, did you sell your Alpha? Please tell me you did. I got stopped out. I bought it yesterday, and I had once I got my fill, I put a stop in around 25 cents below my price. And got stopped out, and so I was flat going overnight. And when I woke up this morning, I was glad I did. And using stops, if you're short term, put in a stop somewhere. And if you get hit, that's why you should. And if you get hit, don't pull it out. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to get hit." Cancel your stop because there's a reason it's there.
Yep. And if anybody's interested in my worst trade, easily it would have to be. I'm probably dating myself here, but way back in the day, Canadians will remember the Bre-X situation where they found off the chart assay results in Indonesia and places like that.
Yeah.
And it ramped up, I don't know, 70,000% or 30, whatever the case may be. I actually bought it on the way down. Bre-X was the first stock I ever bought. I had about $1,600, I believe. I opened up a TD brokerage account. I was only 18, 19 years old. I had no idea what was going on, and I didn't do any research. And I was reading the papers. I worked in a corner store. I was working, doing overnight stuff when I was young. I was still in my teens, and I just thought to myself, "There's no way that they could have, faked all this. There's no way that they could have salted the assays. Surely something had to be there." And I believe I plunked down my $1,600 right when it was about $3.20, somewhere about that. And a big decision was coming up with company officials, and they were going to figure it out. And a few days later, it went to zero, and that was that. So you live and learn. So you improve your processes, and that was the first trade I ever did.
That
makes a good story anyway.
The Bre-X thing. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable. Anyway. There's lots of great investments and a lot of terrible ones after the fact. The terrible ones still are unwind. The great ones are always in the past because it's easy to look back.
Yep.
So I guess we're going to switch gears again, and we've got an interview. Oh, we're going to go to questions. Okay. So we got some viewer questions coming in. And
all right, let's answer some questions.
Yeah, let's answer some questions.
Wow, Ianthus down 57. Wow, unbelievable moves.
You know what? You're going to have to tell me where I'm going to find those questions. Okay, beautiful. Okay, here we go. Patrick McLaughlin. I can't stand the comparisons to the dot-com bubble bust. Doesn't the fact that marijuana is a commodity not make that comparison moot? I think Patrick, I think the comparison, it's about a bubble and what happens when the bubble bursts, and things go back to more normal valuations. Yeah, I agree with you. It may not be a fair comparison, but that was a bubble, and you could argue sitting here today that the marijuana valuations 2 months ago were inflated because here they are, roughly 30 to 40% of what they were then.
Yeah, I would say I'm with Ed. I think there's a fair comparison, not that they're related structurally, they're two different asset classes, but the fact that, like the internet situation, we all knew that the internet was real. We all knew that where it was going. We knew where the industry was going. We knew it would be a huge revenue generator. We knew it would change the way businesses run, create all these efficiencies. We knew there would be survivors that did very well. But there was huge malinvestment, overinvestment. There's a lot of bad business models out there. 90% of the industry had terrible business models that had no chance of working. So I think there's a similarity in that maybe there was some overinvestment in the cannabis space. Valuations got very big. Now we all know where it's going, but just like 10 years into the business cycle now, investors have to start worrying about will recession come,
sure.
And will the stock market sell in anticipation of that recession, and it's clearing some of the malinvestment that had been taking place, and now valuations are getting to a more reasonable level.
Okay. Now, just so you know, we have asked
Vic Neufeld,
to come on, and apparently he's declined. Is that? And it may be because he's maybe he can't say anything because of all the attention, all the magnifying glass, and people are asking questions.
It might be, yeah. My Twitter account's been burning up, and I've been reading about Vic being on, and that was never confirmed. So we just want to make sure we tell viewers that.
Sure.
And it could be for legal reasons. He could be advised not to. There's a lot of moving parts. But as of right now, Vic Neufeld will not be appearing on the show. We will let everybody know if that changes.
Now, Anthony Alvarez just asked a good question. Will we still see a Santa Claus rally? And maybe, the U.S. obviously has got a much bigger footprint in the world. Like, there's nothing even close. The S&P had a terrible day yesterday. I'm going to put up the S&P chart here, even though it's not trading today. I think it can give us a lot of. Okay. So that's just a second here. It's going to be a minute to get this up.
You trying to bring a chart on the S&P?
Yeah, I got to get the quote. My quote stream went off, and now it's coming back on. I want to bring something up here. I think yesterday, we closed below the 200-day moving average. Is that right?
You know what? I actually don't know.
Okay,
I never checked it on that particular stock. I know we're below the 200 on most MJ names, including Canopy Growth. It broke that a couple days ago, and almost everything's below it, including HMMJ as well.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. We're gonna get up stand SPX here, and I think I'm just gonna do a little analysis here technically, and this is going to be a 1-year chart. There we go. We can get that up, I think, and yeah. So look, we've got a clear channel here, and that was basically all of 2018 from that. And then we broke sharply to the downside. Now we've got this sort of W formation. And the thing I want to point out, and I think this is significant, others may disagree, is that this peak here is a little higher than this one. And so far, after we rallied 2 days ago, and then yesterday had the sharp decline, this is going to be what I would call, if we break...
It's coiled. It's coiled. It's a coiled formation. And you know what? I would say in conjunction with those February lows, it's going to be tough it might be tough for longs if the S&P 500 gets below those February lows. Yeah. With that formation, there could be some energy in that. So right now we're solidly above it. I wouldn't be overly concerned right now, but you'll want to check out those February lows. Those were the volatility crisis that we had when a lot of volatility funds got wiped out and created a whole bunch of distortions in the market. That's going to be a key level. So I understand Todd Harrison is about to join us.
Are we ready for Todd? Okay. Well, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk to Todd Harrison. And he runs a fund, CB1 Capital, and that's concentrates on marijuana stocks.
He's a Twitter superstar. He's everybody's the cannabis industry's favorite Twitter prognosticator. So I'm looking forward to talking to Todd in person for the first time.
There he is. There's Todd.
Hey, Todd.
Can you hear us?
Hey, fellas. What's going on?
What's going on, Todd?
That's why we called you, Todd. We want to know what's going on.
Now, Todd, if I could lead the question here, I've been dying to. I want to lead off with a question here. I want to get your take, and I asked Alan Brochstein a similar type question pertaining to Aphria. I wanted to get your take on it because it seems to be some leaching into the sentiment down on the American side, which you're most concentrated in, although your fund, you own stocks on both sides of the border. Are you starting to see a leaching in of negative sentiment south of the border with the Aphria situation? And if you could just give us your overall take on what you're seeing there and what you're looking for, and perhaps whether you're a buyer if certain benchmarks stabilization benchmarks appear in the future.
Yeah, no, it's certainly not helping. There's a lot of U.S. banks that I think are ready to roll out coverage of the Canadian space and the U.S. space as the banking comes through. And I don't think there's a legal department on Wall Street right now that's feeling real good about that, considering that Aphria was really considered one of the chosen one. Right? That was a safe one. It had New York Stock Exchange listing. It had institutional holders. It had analysts researching the stock. Now, I can't speak to the allegations. I don't know the allegations. I think that the silence is deafening from the company, and that's probably one of the main things that's really weighing on this. I remember in the great financial crisis, Bear Stearns went down, a lot, and they blamed the rumors and the short sellers. And I said at the time, if rumors can move a stock that much, how strong is that company? And I think that's the question right now for Aphria. But Matt Bottomley, who's pretty good over at Canaccord, signs I think a $13 valuation for the Canadian assets. I think at the very least, you get a sum of the parts play here. So I'd be more bullish than bearish down here, in the abyss. But we have a small trading position. That's it.
Very good.
What are some of your favorites, Todd, in the space?
Well, we like the U.S., it's been wrong, but we like the U.S. Players in front of what we think is just a number of catalysts coming down the pipe. And, we've seen what happened to these RTOs that came public, whether that's the Curaleaf or the Acreages or the Crescos or the Harvests of the world. I think once all this indigestion works itself through and people look at valuing these things going forward, we saw the Cura stock buyback today, which was a bit astounding, but nonetheless, by our pencil, this company could do 400 million in next year and almost double that the year after. So you're talking about buying 5 times 2019 revenues, 2.5 times 2020 revenues. When there are Wall Street analysts and they do the work, we think they're going to like what they see.
Now, Todd, since we're talking about Aphria, do you think one of the problems right now is the market's digesting just what to believe on the analyst side right now? Considering there's a fair market opinions based on assets that were transferred from Aphria and others, based on, say, the canopy growth, full year revenues from GMP Securities, which end up being, an overestimation. Now, granted, factors were involved for that cut to happen. But do you think there's sort of a crisis, or maybe not a crisis, but do you think there's some skepticism in terms of what can be believed in terms of full year revenues, in 2019, 2020, and that's sort of leaching into, and people are just not buying it and selling off stocks until there's more visibility?
We talk about this a lot. The risk in this space is the duration risk, right? You're basing these companies on 2019, 2020 numbers, and it's only 2018. So you have the soft underbelly of vulnerability here. Yeah, you could point to some catalysts, but on a pure numbers standpoint, you're looking at companies that are valued at $1 billion, $2 billion, and they've done peanuts this year in revenue, and of course you're going to roll your eyes. But this is a bumpy rollout. This industry is coming back online after a 90-year hiatus and a lot of misinformation. So of course it's going to be bumpy. Build outs and rollouts are never sexy per se, but it's laying the groundwork for the next 5 or 10 years. If you're buying these companies on this quarter or next quarter, I think you're going to be disappointed. If you're laying into positions for, I think, the next 5 years and the companies that are going to really emerge as winners, I think you're going to be very, very well off. And that's what we're trying to find here.
Interesting. I noticed yesterday Tilray still over $100, and the Dow was down 800. Do you think it's significant if Tilray stays above 100, or does it matter? I mean, it's. I think the last time I looked, the market cap is still $7-8 billion, and it came out at what, $17? So it's still a very big winner in the space.
Yeah, no, that's certainly been a confounding issue. I mean, we were sitting here thinking internally, we don't have a position in Tilray. We had some for a while. We sold it when we got, we thought, fairly valued or a little bit above that even. But we've been sitting here wondering if the rest of the cannabis tape could hold up while Tilray trades to a more reasonable multiple, and instead you've seen Tilray hold up while the rest of the space has just gotten creamed. So I have no insight. I know it's a closely held company. We'll see what happens when more stock comes to the market. But there are babies with the bathwater that are being tossed out there. I think you just need to do your work and be a little bit patient. I mean, it's bloody out there, but there are babies in that bathwater, and that's what this is where the opportunities are if you can do the work.
Yeah, and the fact that the Dow was down 800 yesterday, and this is maybe not just on the marijuana space, but looking ahead. Are we going to hold here? Are we going to trade? Are we? Some people argue that we're still very early in this monster bull market. What's your view on that? Have we seen the top? These are difficult questions. I'm just looking for your opinion, Todd.
Yeah, no, I don't mind difficult questions. I think that as I look at the tape, I look through the world markets. I look through the sector markets. For the U.S., I don't see much that's very good, to be honest with you. I was talking about this yesterday with somebody. It's a market of stocks, not a stock market. So when you start to see big components and leadership components fail, and now at the very least, you might be putting in some pretty ominous-looking head and shoulders patterns across the S&P and the NDX. I think it's you're playing a dangerous game. I don't know is the right answer, right? I don't know what the market's going to do. I think anybody who tells you they know is full of shit. But I think I can make a case right now that the best days of tech are behind us. It's crowded. You have a lot of sellers on the way up. One of the things that we're looking at for cannabis, and of course, retail hands holding cannabis doesn't help with the volatility, but we think over the next 5 or 10 years, you're going to see a movement of the institutional money into the cannabis space, because that's going to be where the growth is, and that's where we see it going. But for the broader tape, I don't see much to get excited about. You got some performance anxiety into year end, but there's some really, really ugly looking charts around the world, so it's prudent to be a little careful until that resistance clears.
Okay, and I know we've talked about this on Twitter. I think you know my position on this, that it appears that we're in the end of a bull market cycle. It's gone 9.5 years, second longest on record. Now, that being the case, if we are entering a recessionary period where the market could get hit, does CB1 Capital put on the brakes in terms of the positions that they have? Will you end up hedging some of those positions against, say, shorting the SPYs or the Qs or whatnot? Or do you kind of put the brakes, or do you just look 5 and 10 years ahead and say, you know what, we don't know where the bottom is. We are just going to buy because we think in 5 or 10 years, Curaleaf or Ianthus or whatever our big positions are going to be at X value?
It's a great question. I mean, we hedge our book insofar that we'll take 1 to 5% of assets and keep them in non-correlated hedges, S&P, SPY, or Q hedges, put spreads as the case may be. But that's really as a buffer more so than as a pair. But we will raise cash. We have for the last couple of months taken money out at the beginning of the month in anticipation of maybe some softness. But to your point, I can't tell you when, these catalysts drop, and I can't tell you necessarily, when the market will start to price in the forward catalysts, be that the Farm Bill, be that banking reform, be that UN resolutions, be that New York and New Jersey coming online, all of which are expected to happen, all of which are net bullish and the beginning, I think, of a great investment cycle here. So, we're buying weakness in the names that we think are right, and names like Ianthus, names like some of the MSOs that we talked about, and understanding that we could be early, and we could be early for a while, but like I said, there's no institutional research out there on the U.S. side. So we're doing all of our own work here and making a bet that when the analysts from Wall Street come in and do the work, they're going to see what we see. These companies trading at 2.5, 3 times 2020 revenues and just a tremendous growth in the space. And I think the space is misunderstood. People look at the flower and they see an end product. We look at the flower and we see an ingredient. So we don't think that optionality is reflected. We don't think the efficacy is reflected. But all of that has to come through the pipe. And until it does, you got short sellers all over these names and nobody really able to defend it because revenues are still a year out on the horizon.
Very interesting.
Great answer.
Todd, thank you very much. We're gonna wrap it there, and always appreciate your comments. It's it just here in Canada, sitting here in Toronto, it feels. I can't help but feel a little sad to be honest with you. It just looks. I think we're going to find out a lot of answers here in the next few days, or hopefully we do.
Yeah. Again, it was nice to meet you, Todd. Great insight.
Let me say this, Ed, because I think it's.
Go ahead.
Yeah, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of despondency out there. I mean, people who I've sort of befriended over the years on Twitter are just sort of throwing the white flag in and saying it's all over. I mean, the euphoria 6 weeks ago had these things 50% higher, and the despair now I don't think is consistent with the opportunities that are out there. It's just, again, you need a little patience. We like to say keep loose grips on the handlebars here because it's going to be really bumpy. But this is the beginning of the cycle. This isn't the end of the cycle, and for whatever that's worth, that's how we're approaching the forward price action. Yeah.
No. Okay. Thanks,
awesome.
Todd.
Great. Thanks, Todd.
See you later. Yeah. It's interesting, but I think we were talking. If you get, pessimism is about as maximum as it can be, I would say. So you got to be looking for a bit of a rally here. And I haven't, I'm not stepping in yet, but I may tomorrow morning, depending on what I see.
Yeah, the big takeaway I always get from Todd, and one of the reasons why he's one of my best Twitter follows is that he has that long-term vision. And I know you're short-term oriented. I come from the trading side. That's my background. And to have that focus 5 and 10 years out and just say, you know what, I know the market could be coming, this freight train could be coming towards the market, but I don't know where the bottom's going to be, and I know that there's these great catalysts coming in the future, and stepping in there and buying weakness, that inspires a lot of confidence, and that's hard to do. So that kudos on Todd, and long-term investors sharing the same vision would be apt to do some of the same things. Just make sure you don't get over leveraged and you're able to hold a drawdown. That's the only thing.
Now, on Monday, our Sean Cookson went to a test driving simulator to see how he would fare on the roads sober.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be really good because now he's going to do the test again, but this time he'll be high on cannabis. Let's see how he does.
Previously on Cann I Drive.
I'm going to get into a driving simulator and test myself both dry and high.
We call it simulator acquired syndrome. It's like being seasick.
Well, get me a bucket and let's get on the road. What are we doing?
Putting your seatbelt on.
Oh, yeah.
The beginning here is going to be 80 kilometers an hour.
But it's country road, so I can do 120.
What we want to do is see how your decisions are impaired, and we know they will be impaired.
Guy! No one has ever come to you and requested being tested while under the influence of cannabis?
No, we've done some testing with aggressive drivers, but this is the first time for cannabis.
Huh.
The sober test was in the can, with minimal accidents and 0 fatalities. It was now time to test my driving abilities while on cannabis.
And I'm out in the parking lot and I'm about to get lit. That was a good haul. That was a good one. Feeling relaxed already. So I'm starting to feel the effects. I think I'm ready and prepared to take test number 2. So pitter patter, let's get at her.
Test number 2.
All right, John, so how are we gonna approach this?
So we're in an urban situation. You're going to go straight down the road, no turns on this one, and we're going to change the weather up a little bit for you. So you can see a little rain, a little bit more rain, some snow to deal with. If you see anything that looks like a bit of a challenge, what I'd like you to do is obviously back off or do what you normally would do. From today, I've learned like you like cursing at inanimate objects, so that would be good.
So I can drive fast now.
You're going to do 50 kilometers an hour for me, okay?
Oh.
Okay. Put it in drive. And again, you're checking around first, making sure you're comfortable with everything.
Yeah.
Yep, and off you can kind of go, nice and smooth.
This guy just ran a red light or a stop sign. You see that?
Yeah,
I noticed
did,
that. Whoa. Jeez. Watch out, buddy. This guy was going to pass me. A bunch of cows crossing the street.
Yep.
Hey.
Yep. Kind of drifted a bit there.
So I saw that guy in the bushes. Slow? You're slow. Well, hey, guy. Come on.
You are in a construction zone. You still hadn't found those naked sunbathers, huh?
No. Where are the naked sunbathers?
Just behind the grassy knoll on the right.
Is there seriously?
Grassy knoll. No, don't do that. No, no,
Why?
no.
I'm feeling, high. Couple of challenges, but I'm feeling pretty confident. Couple of... Anyway.
Hey, Sean?
Yeah?
Usually better to turn the car on before you put it in drive. Okay? Okay, put
That's
it in drive.
exactly what I did on my driving test. And you know what? I
No,
passed.
you actually...
Getting a little more comfortable with the car.
Oh, good.
Like the acceleration, how it handles.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis has fully kicked in.
Yes.
And I feel even more confident than before. What? Hey! Jesus!
Yeah, you're dead. Okay.
So you're John? John? Pick up for John?
We're good.
All right, where are you going today, John?
We're going for a ride down here, but don't hit the curb.
Oh, jeez! See how I got out of that?
Be better not to get
Perfect. Right?
Right.
Don't yell at me, John.
Not yelling, just articulating strongly. So on this one, really simple exercise, okay? And since you got the car under control now, and you just told me you're feeling really comfortable controlling it.
I am.
This is an excellent exercise to put you in. What we're going to do is we're going to have you go to a party.
All right.
And the deal is, you don't know where it is. You got to follow your friends.
All right.
Make sure you stay with them. Don't lose them. Let's get to the party.
What
Off
are
you
their
go.
names?
Go. Jessica, Sabrina. Go. Come on. We're going to be late. We want to go to the party, okay? Let's go to the party. It's going to
John Dice! Whoa!
Okay, stop. You're dead.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you just
No,
keep
he
going.
went so fast. I slowed down. I put the brake on and he went right by me. Didn't even take off anything.
Did you see the big collision
No, I didn't see.
that came up on the screen?
No.
Would you like us to replay it for you?
Yeah, I'd love to replay it. Yeah.
There's a red car coming from the left there.
Yeah. Watch this. Watch how I brake. I didn't see that before.
I think we can say
All
there
right.
was a collision. The collision sign did come up.
Yeah, you're right. You're okay. Well, I was going to let you out, actually. Right after.
Yeah, I was
Get
talking
out.
too much.
I seriously did not even see the collision.
I know.
Okay. So
You
we
want me to do the interview? for you?
No, it's okay.
Here.
I got it.
It's
I got
okay.
it. Fuck. So we've completed the second test with me under the influence of cannabis, and now we're going to get the results of both tests, the first one and the second one. So how did I do, Jim?
Yeah. So when you first started out today, obviously getting used to the car is an important part of it, and so we're not putting that into consideration, but you did a pretty good job. But what we saw most of the time while you were going through this, in the first scenarios, your situational awareness was pretty high. You were able to articulate what was around you, were able to see a lot of hazards. More importantly, you didn't just see what was directly in front of you, you were picking things up on the periphery, and you were also picking up things behind you. When we went to the next set of exercises when you were high, that ability to pick up the total situational awareness kind of got lost, and we got into some classic tunnel vision of seeing the things directly in front of you. Despite the fact that you were controlling the vehicle better in some ways, it was also showing that you were still making some mistakes that we see with people who are high. Although you can maneuver a vehicle, you're not processing the information the same way as you were in the first exercises. If we didn't have replay, I'm not sure I would have convinced you that you actually hit a car, and you're dead, by the way.
Well, on that note, so what would be the the ultimate conclusion of this this whole little study that we did today?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you brought somebody with you to take you home today, because you're in no condition to drive yourself home.
Right.
That you
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good point. I'm not driving.
The biggest issue in driving is we have 80% of the drivers on the road today think they are better than the other driver. So we have a huge degree of overconfidence to start with, and I take that overconfidence and I build it up even more with some artificial stimulant, we're going to have a much more dangerous situation as we go down the road.
So that was a pretty fantastic ride. I mean, I had a lot of fun with John. I wouldn't say that it was the most professional or scientific study ever done, but it was a pretty interesting experiment nonetheless. For Midas Letter Live, I'm f***ing hungry.
So, you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What did you learn? What did you learn, Sean?
Well, I learned that you probably shouldn't get high and drive, me especially. I mean, I know a lot of people on that use marijuana medicinally can handle themselves, on a daily basis and do what they have to get done and everything else. I'm not one of them. I take CBD oil for my chronic back problems. But yeah.
So the question is would you drive differently on CBD versus TH? I guess you would. CBD.
Yeah, no, CBD. I take it all the time. I take it every day.
Yeah.
So it's the THC that's affecting what's going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, THC is good for pain relief as well as CBD, and the combination is great. But I just use CBD oil, and that I can function on that because there's no, it doesn't mess with your head or anything like that.
Did you know that you're impaired, or were you surprised at the depths that you were impaired?
I knew I was impaired. I was high. There's no question about that. But when I was driving, I felt confident. Like I did feel confident. I was driving along. I was relaxed and everything else. I mean, to be fair, they did throw a little more at me in the later tests. But
like just from personal experience, like I've probably had times when I drank too much, and
haven't we all?
Yeah, and let's face it, you get impaired, it's hard to walk properly. But and I've smoked marijuana, and if you don't mix them, it's hard. You can still function pretty well. You probably feel more stoned than you look.
Yeah.
But with drinking, so I guess the question I'm getting at is, do you think that if you're if you're impaired on booze, you're dangerous?
Yeah.
But I and I'm not trying to make it sound like you should do anything like drive when you're stoned or whatever, but I don't think you're as likely to make mistakes on marijuana. Was that a fair? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that I wanted to check out for myself, right? And because studies have shown that there are people that actually take the cannabis and drive seem to almost be better drivers. That's not the case for me, obviously with the collision that I had at the end there.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be dead. So it's a different, it's tolerance levels, right? And I was doing experiments for my own tolerance level.
Sure.
And just to see how I would do it. Not everybody's going to get into a simulator and try.
Yeah.
And like I said, there were a lot of things thrown at me towards the end that,
So although both situations aren't good, whether you're drinking or impaired with cannabis, what is your feeling that, which is the worst one, all things considered, if you were, well, I guess you can't really compare quantities, but which one do you feel would be the worst impairment?
I'd say drinking would be, you would be more impaired drinking, I would say.
Yeah. When you're pissed from drinking, it's hard to, you can't talk.
It's hard to recover.
You've seen these shows in Florida where they pull guys over and they say walk, and and
the thing is they think they're okay. Like that's the dangerous part of it is that they actually think they're okay.
You think you're invisible.
Think you're invisible, Superman, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's probably one of the biggest dangers is that you actually think you're confident. I'll speed. I can do whatever I want, man.
Yeah. But this time you knew that you knew what your limitations. You knew you're stoned. You knew you had to.
Well, I knew I was stoned, but I didn't know. And like I said, in all fairness, they did throw a lot at me.
Yeah.
And it's random stuff, but hey, random
Apparently,
shit happens in life, so.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of tests. There's going to be there's a DNA test now that can tell you how THC will affect you, since it affects everybody differently. We're going to have that next week. Should be interesting.
Well, so you're going to take my DNA? Am I going to be the guinea pig all the time?
You
or
might
what?
as well.
Ed's going to be walking around the office with a cotton swab.
Yeah,
if you do that, you want to run away.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Anyway, I guess that's it, guys. We're going to wrap it up. Lots to talk about tomorrow. The American market's coming back tomorrow. We've got some good interviews.
Yep, I should be on tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
So to impart and do my best impersonation of Todd. So we'll see how that goes. But
All right. So from Midas Letter Live, from Sean and Ben and Ed. See you later.
So long.